Welcome everyone to What Makes It Tick, episode 6, 7. I forgot to count them again, but this is January 30th of 2024. So today we're going to talk about just the facts. So just the facts, ma'am. That's all we're looking for is just the facts. And what that means is facts check, or the facts out, as many of us in the truck business will call it. So what is a facts check? When you fax something, most of the time it's referring to not your fax, like faxing paper or something like that in the old days as they used to do, right? This is talking about facilities check. That's the short for it. So most of the time, if you see fax spelled FAX, that is somebody that's probably not old. And they don't remember that it actually means facilities check. If there's something shortened, it's probably going to be FACS. So fax check or fax out at that point. Most of the time, this is done before broadcast, before you go to air, and it's the process to make everything sure it's 100%. So that's where we start off with, and that's where we'll kind of dive into. I've got a couple of different checklists and things that I use, and also a friend of mine, Doug, uses, and we'll kind of look through those a little bit, and then also just kind of get some input and some ideas on where we could possibly improve some of those. So, what's the most common time to do a fax check? For me, I like to do our fax out an hour before showtime and like to be completed at least 30 minutes before showtime. So the guys that are, or the gals that are there, the crew can take a break, relax just a little bit, maybe a potty break and grab something to drink, and then sit back down and be ready to go at 10 till at most. So that's our common time. Though we're sometimes having to do a little longer, all a little bit different for, I guess, a little bit different for certain areas and certain sports too. How big a space you have to deal with, how many pieces, that's a big part, right? How many pieces you need to go through to fax out also. So I guess we'll call that question then. I'll offer it out there to Greg. You're on camera. Go ahead and tell us, what is your most common time? When is it normally done?
Well, I guess it depends on the show. So in the old days when I used to do a lot of single day shows, like say basketball, truck rolls in the morning, we power it up, we set up all of our gear, we fax, we might have a little meal break, and then we're on the air later that day. In that case, we want to make sure everything's working before we walk away for a meal. So just everything just needs to work because if it doesn't work, well, you're working through your meal. That's kind of how hoops works. Uh, Lately, most of my broadcast stuff is golf, and we always have two set days to get everything. I mean, golf is massive. It's one of the biggest setups you'll ever be on outside of like maybe something motorsports related. But we cover many acres of ground, and that's not kidding. I mean, square miles. I mean, you know how big a golf course is. We've got cameras on sometimes every tee box, every green, a lot of the fairways and stuff. So on a show of that size, um, it breaks down by department, video, which in this context, V1, a lot of people in corporate think that's the guy, running the E2 or the ATEM or whatever. He's
Yeah.
just the guy that runs the camera shading room on broadcast. So he wants to make sure that all the cameras are physically where they need to be on the golf course, that all the cable runs are back to his base stations, so that when he goes to shade what he's calling camera one, that actually affects camera one head. Okay, so that's his fax. Then further downstream, what comes out of that base station goes into the routing system and at everybody's monitor wall, and of course the TD switcher. So we want to make sure that head number one is input number one in the switcher, or well, wherever he wants camera one in a switcher. So the TD's got his own thing of fax, making sure all his video sources are in place. Then he'll get the camera guys on. Hey, when I put one online, does your tally light come on? And when I take you offline, does your tally light go away? So the TD is doing that part of the fax. Come over to audio. I've got an announce booth with some people with some headsets and stuff in there. I've got some interview positions. I might have some roving wireless. And then I may or may not have a boatload of effects mics. On golf, I've got a whole nother 70 something input mixer that has the effects mics on the golf course. And I have whatever's left in the show in the main mix console. So both of us at the same time are faxing, what comes into our console? So my play-by-play headset, does that come up in my play-by-play fader? When you hit the talk back to the director, does the sound come out of my fader and go to the director speaker? When he hits the producer button, does it go to the producer speaker? Great. I'm sending you a mix. I generate a mix for every single talent. Everybody gets their own mix on my show because I've had too many people go, hey, can I have a little bit more of me? Can I have a little less effects? And everybody's different. And it's just easier to do that way. So part of what I fax when I fax your microphone is your headset. Okay, great. Are you hearing yourself? Do you hear me when I interrupt? Okay, I'm going to pan my music all the way to left ear. Do you hear this in just one ear? And then I'm going to pan it the other way. Do you hear this in the other ear? And then I'm going to mute that aux bus that goes to the play-by-play guy. Did you lose everything in your headset? You know, this ensures that you've got both channels, because if I just give you one channel and then, you know, I play something like Beatles music that's got, you know, singing on one side and guitars on the other,
Yeah.
you wouldn't hear the whole song, you know, and again, that comes back to show content, but I need to make sure that the system works correctly. And that's the only way to do it. Left only, right only, did it all go away? Or did I accidentally, like in Dante, get one click off? So now instead of having aux 1 left and right, you have aux 1 right, aux 2 left. Yeah, you got a left and a right and it pans, but when I mute, I still got half of a headset worth of stuff. So all those kind of things need to be checked out. Comms, you know, everybody gives me a piece of paper with, hi, here's what I want on my 32 intercom panel keys. So I let most of the users kind of fax their own station. I'd be there for a week if I had to check that many buttons in that many places. And it's hard to check things like comms when you don't have somebody on both ends of the line. Okay, so like
Very
in the
true.
booth, we have a couple of belt packs. So my A2 gets director on one channel and it gets, you know, my private audio channel on the other. So I will go on to just the director channel. Hi, do you hear me here on your channel 1? Ah, yes, I do. Great. Here, now I'm talking on our channel. Do you hear me here? Yes, I do. Okay, great. Go to your stage manager. He gets producer and like the graphics people or something, you know. So we go through all the different permutations. And this is as soon as things are set up. So like I get there, the truck turns on, I hand the A2 a paper for the booth. Okay, here's who's where. You know, John is the play-by-play, Steve is the color, Judy is the analyst, you know, whatever. And here's how they're going to sit by the table so that they're in the right order on camera. So when they put the fonts in, that, you know, John is sitting in front of John's name.
So you're
instead of
saying
Judy's.
this was more so about the setup and faxing
Yeah.
the
But it's
inputs
all
and the
the
list and everything
it's
there.
all the technicians ensuring the system is doing what it wants to.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
And we do this without the direction of production. So the director might, after all of this is done, and I'm happy with audio, the TD's happy with cameras, videos happy, you know, tape is happy that this router head goes into this machine like they want. After
Right.
we're all happy as a crew, production might come in, director and producer. Producer will sit down and say, hey, if I hit the all call, all of my talent hear me, and all the talent will be on
Right.
headset. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It
yeah.
kind of every division will have their own checkout
Right.
process for that
And not all
too. And the
production does
inputs.
that. A lot of production has so much faith in the crew that when they sit down in the chair, they're happy that we have done all of our jobs
Right.
and that when they do hit the all call, there's not going to be any trouble. So a lot of
Right.
people proceed on that assumption. And I have the lead golf producer doesn't. He sits down, the first thing he does, play-by-play got me here, host got me here, you know, Walker guy. Okay, great. Now that everybody hears me and they all hear each other, then he goes in and he'll like show them elements or, you know,
Right.
and then eventually, once you get past that stage, the director's happy with the cameras. And a lot of times the director will just come on because maybe he doesn't know who is running camera 3. So he's like, one, who's on? Who is it this week? Oh, hi, how you doing? Okay, yeah,
Right.
okay, give me a wide shot, tight shot. Okay. They probably already had a camera meeting to discuss content for the show. And then at some point, when everybody's happy, hopefully we can squeeze in a full on rehearsal. Now, this is more for production and talent, but it helps us as technicians too. They'll roll the open. The play-by-play guy will read his copies. So I know, okay, at what point in this pre-recorded open do I need to open the play-by-play mic? Because here's where he starts talking.
Right.
Those are good rehearsal cues for me, you know, and everybody takes what they need out of that. And again, this all goes back to test, 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 test some more, and then rehearse, 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 and then we're going to go on the air. If you sit down, you know, 5 minutes before the show starts and say, hey, you know, camera 1 doesn't get a tally light, or well, how
Right.
come when I say camera 1 pan left, camera 4 moves? Why is that? 5 minutes before you're live to the world is not the time to reveal these things.
Agreed completely on that. And I think that's a lot of people will miss that part. So breaking it down, as Mickey suggested, and this whole show is about faxing out is something that Mickey brought up. That's something we could definitely discuss and learn a little bit from each other on. Mickey suggested also that talk about the department level, which is what you're saying, Greg, and then the full production level also. So it's not just audio doing their job, video doing their job, and cameras doing their individual jobs, engineers, whatever, but it's also the whole production as a whole. It's like, does it all flow together and work at that point?
Well, it's
So,
also very different for a small show. I mean, if you're a
oh yeah,
one, two,
absolutely,
three
it's
guy in
scale,
a
right?
corporate ballroom kind of thing, you are the entire department for everybody. So,
Yeah,
but that's probably the worst case, where we have that many people. So you just have to take away that even though you're only one or two people on the crew, you're still walking through all that stuff. And
yeah,
hopefully you're doing it before the show starts.
absolutely. Andrew, I know you work on some trucks in different places, and different production stuff. Do you have any ideas on what is your most common, so say whenever it's desired, way of doing a fax? When is that normally? Let's say production fax. So before you go to air, that hour, 2 hours, what is it normal for you in time?
Yeah. I can talk from an operator's like operations side a little bit on this one. Let's see. So on the UFC side, since that's what we do a lot, do 48 of those a year. And it's usually the same crew. So like you were saying, Greg, sometimes the crew just handles it. Our crew is generally very like they know with the way it's supposed to work, and engineering usually gets it set up for them. So they'll go through and they'll check almost all their own stuff on their own. And then, like you said, the TD will sit there, and we have two very robust TDs, and they will just knock everything out and usually dispatch, like, hey, this tally's not working, and like run through all of that. And then our front of house producer, because we got an in-house show, front of house will do all their own checks. We usually get a set day on Friday. And so build happens on Friday. Parking power is Thursday, set up, really build on Friday, and then everything is checked by Friday. And then, like you said, rehearsals um on before about an hour before doors open. Or I'm sorry, rehearsals close about an hour before doors open, but we usually run through top show reads, hits, a bunch of those little things that the audio mixer that the A1 is going to want to touch on, or camera positions or any major camera moves. Because during fight action, fight action, it just happens.
Right.
But we rehearse the major walkouts, and then any other moments that are in the show. So yeah, and then like you said, walk away for about an hour for lunch. Or if there's a problem, you carry around a sandwich or you eat during fight action. So that's kind of that's what we do on site at least.
Very similar. Guy, what about you in some of your production stuff?
Yeah, same type of thing. An hour did that. Yeah, an hour before we're rehearsing and walking through all the key. There's playbacks. We're just going, all right, roll, video 5. Let's take it to the end. All right, leading into 6. What's going to happen? Whose mic's going to open up that mic? So we just run through the show. But yeah, days before I'm checking everything, especially cloud stuff. Making sure my instances can spin up. I don't want to be caught. If I need 7 G4 DNs, I want to make sure I can get them all. So, building in redundancy so you don't get caught. Having infrastructure in other regions, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, there's just some learning curves there. But usually when you're working with pros, they've done this before, but it's still a good idea to just make sure everybody's connections are connected. And what happens if there's uh, a cable that gets ran over, or how fast can you recover?
True.
Or can you just stick with one camera?
Yeah.
Camera one,
Well,
that's
I
all we
mean,
got.
I think we've
Home.
probably said it a few times. It's like a backup's not a backup unless it's been tested and it works. Because then at that point, you don't have a backup. Bo, what about you?
Yeah, so kind of like Andrew, I'll come at this from a operator standpoint on a NFL primetime NFL package. So pretty much the schedule for the week was Park and Power Thursday. We would show up Friday morning, do our departmental facts, like Greg was talking about, make sure all of our stuff fires up. We're fortunate that it's pretty much the same crews, same trucks every single week. So once the show's built in August, then we ride the season pretty much the same way. So I usually wouldn't leave Friday until I knew that all my gear was working, all of my graphics were good, everything was happy. And then Saturday morning, we would have a fax with my graphics producer. So we would have just a graphics producer. We would go through everything with him. And then at 5 o'clock, obviously cameras are building, audio is building, everybody's building, on Friday and first part of Saturday. And then at 5 o'clock on Saturday, we had our first TD fax. So the TD would sit down at 5 o'clock, fax out every camera, every tally, and actually at 3 o'clock they had their EVS fax where they would fax every EVS machine, all 18 of them, and all 16 channels on every machine. It was intense. So 3 o'clock was audio EVS fax. At 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock was TD fax. So that was Saturday's 5 o'clock was the first hour-long camera fax to make sure everything was good. So on Sunday, everybody showed up. Crew call was usually 10 o'clock for a 8 p.m. game for us. We would make sure everything fired up Sunday morning, make sure Windows didn't do any crazy updates or anything overnight. And usually our fax would start around 12:30 would be kind of a soft fax for random graphics for some of our stuff. And then at 1 o'clock was camera fax. So it's with production, no talent, but director, producer, everybody knew that fax started at 1 o'clock. And there was literally a countdown to fax. Like it was intense. I mean, it was just like you were coming on the air. So they would count down like 20 seconds till fax. So literally when 1 o'clock hit on the dot, what you would hear the director say. So on the director's side, you would hear him faxing cameras. The producer would be faxing his comms with all of his replay machines. So you can't listen to them both at the start of fax. So we would always listen to the director. But basically he's going through and he's saying, ready one, take one, gone, back, bug, split. And he would wait a half a beat for the camera guy to say good. And then he would say, ready to take two. And they would fax 40 cameras in 3 minutes. All right. So let me break that down for a second. So he said, ready one, take one, gone, back, bug, split. So basically what's happening is when he says take one, the TD punches him up and then that punches up that camera. So the camera guy sees his tally.
Right.
Then the TD punches up the beauty. So the tally's gone.
Okay.
Then he punches it back. So it's back. So gone, back, bug, split. So bug is return one, which should be his camera with the bug. All right. And then return two should be a split screen. So they're faxing literally comms, tallies, and both returns literally in 5 seconds per camera for 40 cameras. And it's insane to listen to. And it's just it's a master's class in production. And then they proceed to spend the next 2 hours faxing every element of the show. They have a 1-page fax list that is literally every single thing that could possibly happen throughout the show.
Wow.
And they literally, fax was from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock on Sunday. Then we would eat for an hour, and then we would get back from lunch and sit there and know that we had 4 hours till we were on air. There was a lot of movies
that is
consumed on
intense.
Sunday afternoons. But it honestly, and we actually had to adjust our workflow strictly for fax, because when we were faxing, we would prepare, call it 30 graphics for a game, like 30 specialty graphics for a game.
Right.
And knowing that we would air 6 or 8 of them maybe. But we would have to, in fax, show them all 30 that we had prepared. And this doesn't really include like the always ups that are just, we always have a quarterback comparison or whatever it is. Right. But these are the specialty ones that we would make just for that matchup. But we would have to have a way to quickly call up and place those 30 graphics, at the speed of fax, which is actually much faster than the speed of the show.
Gameplay. Right. Yeah,
right.
That makes sense.
So we really had to dial in our workflow for the sole purpose of fax and getting through all 30 graphics in about a 5-minute period. Whereas in the game, we usually had a good bit more time than that to kind of sort through what we were doing. But it's intense, and not all NFL crews that I've worked on have an intense fax like that. But
where is that coming from? Is it coming from the producer side or the producer, the director? Okay, so the producer demanding that type of I guess we'd say.
Yeah, and
exactness.
it seems to me that a lot of so in this particular lineage of producer and assistant producers who are now becoming producers, and directors who are
Right.
becoming, were assistant directors and now
Yeah.
becoming directors, that particular lineage, they all have a pretty strict facts, pretty legit facts. Some of the other shows like 4-letter networks that I've worked on have been much more soft and just kind of, oh, show me what you got, okay, great, no problem.
Right.
But so it's depends on the show, but some of the big boys do it really, really well.
Well, I'm ashamed to even show my tools now after hearing that. So we'll go into the tool side, because I think having a good tool is definitely a way to start it. And Doug Ferguson, a good friend of mine, and Greg's, and a lot of other people here know Doug also. Doug has grown a lot since he got started, and definitely he was really putting a lot into it. The thing that he ran into is he's not using seasoned professionals all the time. So he needed to create a checklist that was a little bit more, I guess you'd say, healthy, to say the least. And he has a good friend that that was running a truck. Now he's working for the Bulls, I believe. But his good friend, I believe his name is David, had a really good checklist, and that's where Doug kind of built off of that. So everybody should be able to see this now. I'm gonna go to Doug's first, and we'll kind of look over it. So this is a show that we did together, and the way he approached this was everybody was listed out, so you knew where you were. At the top, this was just a glance so that you could see exactly how many people, how many functions were there, what needed to be done. And then it was broken down in a departmental side. Now he was doing high school or college football with this. I believe this was actually a high school game, but sending out his pregame stuff also. And then whenever he would go in and type in his initials, for instance, it would change color. So at a color glance, he would be able to see if it's been done, if it's not done. And then all the way down to the very beginning of parking the truck. And then he had it blocked off, and he gave everybody access to this Google sheet. And so then at that point, they would put in and say if camera was, say, Guy. So Guy would put his initials in that he did that part, and then all the way down and work their way. So he just broke it down as granular as possible so that whenever somebody was going through their checklist, they're not doing it in their mind. He's actually going through paper effectively and resetting the cameras to everything else because of the level of camera operators that he had. He went down into audio. He wasn't real strong, but he was having to use people that weren't necessarily the strongest there also. So this was another thing that he did, was making sure that they did their checklist, not thinking, oh, I did that, or did I check that, or did I not? Same situation. You just put your initials down in it, and it'll change colors like that. So that was kind of a good idea for him to go through that. The 3-place setup for replay, making sure that it is everything in order. Graphics, and this also because he was working with a little bit lower budget, he was actually working through people that weren't there the whole day. So unlike what Andrew was saying, Bo, is that these guys were coming in an hour, maybe 2 hours before the show. So this checklist would actually help him go through it also. Is like, did I go through the 3-5 different things in the graphics setup to make sure that we had everything done, and then this graphics person could sit down and just double check those things real quick. So that's where you notice at the bottom, this was something he put in Doug time. So right before a show, I don't know if it was just me, but I was like, dude, you got to walk away. Just walk away for 5 minutes, get your head in the game as it is, get your head in the game and make sure you're ready to go, because you can't just work, as we were all saying, it's like, right, we have dinner, then do show, or like Bo was saying, do dinner and a very long nap, then do show. But the time to step away from I'm solving a problem and get into it, you could actually have a much better show by doing that. So One of the things he always ran into was that issue. So he was working to the nth minute, second even, and it had hurt his shows because he didn't ever have time to take a breath. So I thought that was a pretty good one to stick in there. This was a little bit bigger, one that he shared with me too. As you can see, there's many more levels. Now, this was also an ongoing growing list. So everything was checked through, and on this, I can't remember what truck or what event this was. This might have been soccer. He was working with soccer for a while, as a what do they call it? Video assisted replay, I believe. And so the VAR systems, with referees and such. And so they had a very, as you can see, a lot of details. I'm still rolling, all the way down 158 different levels of checks on that. Then this other one that he's called Global Master was one that he kind of worked off of to build his checklist and on. And like Greg said too, every show's different, so you may not need everything there. But boy, just a great place to start. I went a different route on my setup. Ours is a little bit simpler. I went with Google Forms instead of Google Sheets. So Google Forms, and this is definitely a work in progress. Thank you, Mickey, for kicking me in the pants to do this. So little simple things like that I check out at a glance, and I don't even think I do it, but I do it, is power voltage. Like I look up there and I was like, oh yeah, 115 or 120, whatever it is supposed to be. I don't even do a check miss. I don't purposely think of that, but I do it. And then power, simple things like internet. Is it connected? Is it operational? Is there a speed test to verify that this is the speed that we're supposed to have? That was something we all started doing. And that was something, because we were parking and then doing a show. And then as we're doing the show every day, you can get very complacent. But since we were doing this every day, we needed to make a checklist that was every single piece, because as soon as you forget it, you're going to have problems the rest of the day. And put out fires. You don't have to put out fires all the time. So the check comms to each person, ours is a lot smaller than 40 camera operators. So it didn't take near as long to check through that on the comm side, but it's just a check. You hear us to everybody, ISOs that needed to be there. On the technical director, I'm going to expand that out some more, but effectively same thing. Verify signals are in. Is the audio in coming in the right way? Is audio outputs routed the right way? And then making sure replay wipes and other special effects that need to be done. And we do a side-by-side with a bar, make sure all the graphics part. 3Play, that's a reminder, and Doug's going to be running that for me next couple of weeks, is new session every day, making sure that we clean off the drives, because we're doing so many 10, 12 hours a day of recording. We don't have enough storage to do the whole week. So we have to make sure we clean drives and purge things every other day for the most part. Audio operator, that was just kind of a holdover of making sure that we start off with the basics. We don't have an A1 that's actually doing their job. So whoever's overseeing that position just needs to make sure they check, because it's just net mics is all we're doing with them. And on our robo operations, that grew into must do for us because of our restarting our server, making sure that it's up and fresh, and then making sure that we home, pan, and tilt, because our heads can stay on 24 hours, but if you don't home them every day, the presets get off because they're relative to wherever the homing position is. And so that's always good to check to make sure that they're set, and then going through and setting those presets. This is where my guys got a little bit lax. And so I had to put a little slap down on them about that. It's like, test your presets before you go to air. Make sure that they are where they're supposed to be, and set the presets, because for us, we're using robotics. We're not using the presets. We're just using the presets to actually go to a position. Then we're live at that point and they're driving it. And then they got really lax and they were like, I'm driving the camera anyway, but it takes forever to get from here to there. And so use the presets, because they can go 100% fast. Your speed on your joystick's not going to go there. So that's an ongoing thing that we're having to overcome. And so I put it in the list, check it off. And the way this is made is each one of these are checkable. So it's easy to see. And this is one reason I like the forums. It's a little easier to see on a mobile device versus a spreadsheet having to zoom in and out and all that. And then on the distribution confirmation side, it's just, are our signals both our in-house signals, which we have 3 different going out for that, and our outgoing program audio video, is it confirmed at our destination where it's going locally to the encoders? And then of course on the far end, can we confirm that they actually see us? So those are all pieces in that. It's a relatively easy thing to set up if you've got Google, the Google Docs way of doing it. And like this took me maybe an hour. And then I'll just keep adding stuff to it, adding more questions. You can make them yes, no, you can make a multiple choice. Just depends on how you want to construct it for your operators and such. And then whenever it comes back to me, they do their own synopsis of what that's kind of useless to me on the responses, but I could do a review in Sheets, and then I could really see exactly what was chosen and done and what was checked off. I would like that to be a little more granular so that I could actually do maybe a graph off of it or something like that, I could really see, oh, here's somebody didn't check this one thing. That's one thing where the spreadsheet is kind of cool, because you could go down the list and you say, oh, he didn't check to run tape or didn't do a record test. So that's one of them that I like about the spreadsheet. So I got to figure out that side of it. For those of us that are moving a lot, if you don't have one of these, this is not mine, but it's similar to mine. It's in the truck, and it's a checklist where before you move the truck, before you roll the van, you go through these things. 1, 2, 3. It's boring. I know it's terrible, but it's something that saves you whenever you go back to that 4th tire and it's like, oh, it's in 20 pounds. Well, if you would have just left, you would found out 10 miles down the road that tire's gone. So those kind of checklists or faxes lists are definitely something that are needing to be done whenever we're out there. So that's kind of the basics of mine. I would love to see anybody else have any other fax lists that they could share possibly. Greg, do you have anything that's digital like that? Or let me ask that question. Or is it physical? Or are you using a stone and a chisel to do yours?
I'm using 30 years of sitting in the chair, and it's all here.
All right, that's wrong. That's
and-
wrong, Greg.
Well, no, it's not wrong,
But
because
nobody else can check you though. That's the problem.
well, nobody else gets yelled at if it's wrong either. I mean, at the network level, the A1 is responsible for all comms and audio, anything that makes noise. So I get yelled at if it's not right. So there are a few people that are as thorough as I am. I mean, I
I can
was
believe
mentioning
that.
earlier that I don't just check your mic. I check your IFB feed too, what's in your headphones and what's in each ear of your headphone, and that it comes from the right bus. I mean, I go through every single talent position and do that. It doesn't take long. And then once that's done, I know that when somebody puts on a headset, they're going to hear the right thing. And when they push a button, they're talking to the right people. So, no, it's not a
Good.
list, but I mean, seriously, I mean, sports, when you get down to it, most sports other than the game isn't really different from a TV perspective. There's an announce booth full of commentators. You've got some
Very true.
reporters somewhere. You
Very
might
true.
have some floater guys, and you got effects mics, and then you have playback sources and music to break. I don't care what you're doing, baseball, hoops, racing, golf. I mean, from a production standpoint, it's very similar. I mean, sports is very formulaic. So that helps. And you know, I know that when I sit down and you know, I got all this stuff in front of me and around me and behind me that, you know, that I want my director coming out over here and my producer coming out over here because that's where I like it. And we've tested that during either fax time or rehearsal time. And you know, I don't have a list.
Yeah.
Mental list for me. Sorry.
I was used the same way. And I basically I started subscribing to what happens when Jeff gets hit by the bus. And that's, with me being at the top of my company, I had to make those extra pieces. And so a lot of my guys have just learned because they watch what I did, or we're watching each other's backs in that way too. But this really, after Doug went through this learning phase, I was like, that's actually a pretty good idea to help standardize things, and
Well,
just
and
be a
you're not
reminder.
lying about his crew. I mean, I did a few of his first football games after we rebuilt the truck, and yeah, some of the people. I mean, yeah, I got a camcorder at home. Yeah, I know what I'm doing, and it's like, well, here you go. And you give them a box with camera and a viewfinder and a tripod, and they're like, what do I do with all this stuff? I
I
mean,
have to make
this
a
is
camera. It's
right.
like-
No, this is the level that he's dealing with. So, I
yeah,
mean, I get it,
yeah.
but at the network level, I mean, I'd like to think that the network's not hiring people that can't do the job. Now they do. I get a lot of A2s that I call U2s. They're really just utility people that got hired as an A2 for somehow, I don't know. Um, and we try to weed those people out. But for the most part, most of the guys on my crew always know what's going on. And at the golf level, I mean, there's not a whole lot of people that are on the golf circuit. And most of us on the golf circuit, we've been there forever. At least most of them are pushing a decade, even what we call the new people.
I would agree with you that once we are used to doing something, it becomes just habit at that point. And then this is just, I guess, creating habits. Bo, what about you? I just have this feeling that I'm about to open up a can of worms with Bo. Bo's going to have like a checklist that's talking to Grafana, that's updating off the cloud, and then it's
Not yet. Not yet.
okay.
Not yet. No, honestly, it's a spreadsheet that I always print out onto a physical piece of paper and tape it to the desk. So I have one for set day and one for game day. And usually like the left half of it is kind of the things that need to happen. And then I always have a cell that just has like a grayed out 0, so that I know that like that's where I have to check. That's my hold the check. So I check everything off. And then the right half of that paper is just like a notes section, like things to improve, things to work on in the off week, the next day, like things that, we had a hiccup on this computer, we need to look into it or whatever it is. And then at the end of the show, I'll just snap a picture of that before I rip it up and throw it away. And then I'll usually, part of that will also be like a tally tracker. So, on a good show, we would have 10, 12, a really good show, we would have like 18 tallies. So we would always keep notes so that if we wanted to go back in the game tape and this was several years ago. Now we have a mirror in the rack and we just always record everything. But at the time we weren't really recording all of our stuff. So I would know where in the game we actually had tallies. It was just a good way to keep track of things. So
that's
a
actually
physical paper
brings me
taped to the
up.
desk.
Okay, so that brings up something else too, regarding that. We kind of talked a little bit about this a while back, I guess. But same thing as I do have the forums. I don't have easy access to it right now, but I was using Google Forms as a problem or a issue to be addressed, a room for improvement, whatever you would call it, that everybody had. And if they had a problem, they would go to this one link. They would type in or pull down on the different types. That would then go to my spreadsheet, a master spreadsheet, and then I would be able to see it. So similar to what you're doing, but not on paper. It was
well. So to speak to your Google Forms, in a previous life, when I was in charge of a university campus and would have students running a baseball game and a softball game and all these other things, we would have spreadsheet for the checklist or a printable paper for their checklist. But then my Google Forms would always be the game report or the after action report. So before they could leave the venue that night, they had to fill out the Google form so that I got an email with all their responses, like, this is what went good, this is what didn't go good, this is what we need to follow up on, this is, so I knew how the game went by the time they left the stadium if I wasn't there to see it myself.
Right. Or
so that was my use for the Google form.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, well, I didn't hear anything. It's either one, they're dead, or it went well, one or the other. Okay. So Mickey from the chat says 32 items on his checklist on setting up his system. 32 items. recalling Dante, monitor the route, the monitor routing, the lights, the camera, computers, etc. 32 items in this checklist. Mickey, I think you could do better. I think you could have more. Oh no, he says this is just specifically for office hours when he's doing that. I would expect it to have been more. The biggest challenge I think is finding is like so many things are similar. Like Greg says, you know, in the end, we're all heading the same route. So something I didn't talk about is like on the distribution side, how many times do you go through and check every single distribution? So that means every YouTube link, every key. Those have burnt me more than once, because when you're going to, okay, I'm going to go live, it's going to trigger out to 100,000 followers or whatever. Hey, I'm live. So you can't really always do the quote true live test, but that should be something you do in order to make sure that you're truly faxed out, so you can know that your output is not only going to their servers, but it's also going through their authorization part, that it's public and visible. So that would be one for sure. Hey there, Andy. So what do you have to contribute about a little bit of the faxing out on the audio world?
Well, I think this is an interesting conversation. Looks like I just froze there. No, I didn't. In that it seems like the more hats you're wearing, the more a need for the list. And, you know, some of my shows are very simple and some of them get more complex. Like, you know, if there's a lot of comms and all of that, yeah, I start to have a list. And it also depends on who I'm working with. You know, that's a big deal. You know, are you handing a piece of paper off or a file off to someone who's really going to understand it? You know, it used to be in the old days, you'd have an IO list, you know, input, output. And if you handed that to an A2 and he didn't like scratch his head or she didn't scratch her head, I'm like, oh, good. That's a good sign. I don't have to tell them how to do their job. I just have to make sure they do it, you know.
Right.
But, you know, it's like you were saying earlier, Greg, you know, you get people who are real A2s and then you get people who are another sports guy I worked a little bit with said, he said, Andy, you're a real A2. These guys are plumbers. They know how to run cable, you know, and I get it because it's true. But anyway, I was just doing a show recently and it's funny, I should have had actually a checklist, but you know, I covered everything. It just kind of got down to the wire. But the guy sitting next to me was doing, it was a small show. The guy sitting next to me was doing the Zoom part of it. And he kept like blaming me when like he couldn't hear the back and forth on the Zoom, you know, the send and receive of the Zoom. And I'm like, I know it's working. I can see it on my console. I'm like, okay, I'm going to pull up Dante Controller and I'm going to look at it. I'm going to look at those little green lights going off in Dante Controller. And sure enough, they are. And I'm like, no, it's getting to you. And I think with a checklist that you go down with that person ahead of time, assuming you've made time for it or production has made time for it, it can circumvent that panic that guy or gal is going through in that moment. So that's another good use, I think, of a checklist. It's just it's a more of a confidence thing, even though you know you've done your job.
It is a little bit of cover your ass too.
Absolutely.
Because, you know,
yeah.
it's like you made them check this at that point. It's like, do you have this?
Mhm.
Do you sure you have this? I've
Yeah.
definitely ran into the same similar thing working these virtual shows in corporate world, is 14 languages. That was
Yeah.
a nightmare. And they had them all mixed up. And it's like we were going one by one, going like, what does that sound like? Hey, anybody here speak Hindu? Anybody? It was like we didn't know who they were. Because they were off site. The translators were all off site. We were bringing in all those people on site to embed them into the different streams. And it is like, if we didn't go through and check those ahead of time, it would have been a nightmare once we gone live, because nobody would have the right ones. Yeah. Nothing worse than Germans trying to listen to French. Speaking of
Yeah.
our favorite Germans,
Ich weiß nicht, was
welcome,
daran
Jonas.
das Problem ist, ganz ehrlich. Also, ich verstehe nicht, warum da jetzt so ein großer Aufstand deswegen gemacht werden muss.
Yeah, see, my universal translator is not working again.
I couldn't agree more, whatever he said.
Yeah, you
No,
need to
I thought he
fax
said
that more.
beers are on him after the show. That's what I heard.
That's what it was. Okay. Good to see you, Jonas. Thanks for being up so late. So we were talking about fax, and for those that have kind of kind of joined a little later. Fax, facilities check. So not FAX. That's, even though people always probably spell it like that because they're not necessarily know, but it's fax, FAC, maybe with an S, but it's probably fax because it's FAX shortened like that because it would only fit on a key panel or some kind of label somewhere, some way that's kind of where it's stuck. Well, Bo, you were going to say something. What were you going to say?
I'm just saying, maybe all you check is the facilities, but we're pretty much doing a facsimile of the entire show in our fax. Just
Okay,
saying.
so you could look at it that way, I guess. That's a good point. Okay. All right. All right. I didn't look at it as that word. It's just in my mind, if I see FAX, I'm thinking of that sound, and it's makes me cringe whenever I see somebody going, "Did you fax that to me yet? Did you fax that to me yet?" So I think paper. That's just me.
That might also be an age thing.
Oh, okay, that's true. Yeah, my modem, because my modem's not working. But no, I do have that problem whenever I go to hotels and stuff. They're like, "What you fax over the third party thing?" I'm like, "Really? You guys, Hilton, DoubleTree, the only ones using fax machines in the world with them." And as it turns out, my brother's in the medicine world, and so since he's in healthcare, they fax a lot.
And Gold's Gym, it's the only way you can cancel your membership.
Okay.
A
That I
lot of
didn't know.
realtors still fax.
Realtors? Oh,
Yeah,
well,
contracts
that's
and
an age
whatnot,
thing for sure too. Yeah.
I don't know.
So is anybody using something? So Bo, you mentioned, you're printing it then just for easy access, I guess, right? So printing out the spreadsheet or the checklist, going through it for easy access. What about, is there a way that we could tie that into more digitally ways so that it would be faster to monitor and keep on top of? I wonder if maybe a more of a website, maybe somebody that was big in that world would be able to help us kind of develop something that's more of an online type tool. It's just got me thinking, but I want the visibility after it's over, or while it's happening, or when it's over, either way, so that it could actually be checked on live.
I mean, if we knew anybody who like had web skills or app development skills,
Mm-hmm.
That would be
if
great.
we knew of anybody like that, I've often thought that it would be really cool for everybody on your crew to have their little checklist, right?
Right.
And when they go through their checklist on your screen, it turns green as they go through it, right? So that by the end
And
of
it
the
automatically assigns the name, and like if you then say that wasn't checked, it is hooked up to your accounting, so it like deducts it from their paycheck.
it deducts. Yeah, exactly.
Spoken like a true coder.
It's QuickBooks it's QuickBooks
just
integration
automatically
right there.
ACHs it out. No, I think it would be a good idea. I mean, there's so many different tools that are going online that could help. Now, I do have a problem, and I got to feel Greg's going to agree with me on this, is sometimes putting procedures in place that are going to get in the way of doing the job. Just because if you're going through this thing, it's like, I got to check this thing, I got to check it, and you're checking, but you didn't do a job, or you just flew through it really fast. Maybe that's detrimental at that point. But I think the easiness of being able to check through it, that's why I like the Google Forms a little better than the spreadsheet, because it was easier to see, but easier to, especially on a mobile device, because I'm more so going to do it on a mobile device. And camera
Yeah, I
operators,
think-
they're not going to have a computer in front of them out there usually.
I think there's something to be said for putting a lot of thought into what's on your checklist and how it's worded, so that you don't just get caught up. We're like, well, we kind of did most of that, but maybe we didn't do like the last 5%. Like everything needs to be bite sized so that it's, it's like, yes, we definitely did all of, everything we need to do to check that off. It's worth putting a lot of thought into the items.
It's similar to the multi-view discussion we had. Like you need to have multiple probe points. And if you need to, let's say you need to check multi-language feeds, like put something in that says, hey, this is the Spanish channel, and check it And also make sure that the multi-view is actually the thing that you're looking at. Because like that can go wrong if you're like, oh yeah, this is the right aux and you're actually on the wrong aux or something like that. But it's the same way with Probe Points, like make sure if your end destination, let's say in the Vmix world, is Vimeo, create a test event and actually stream to it and check for latency and lip sync issues there instead of just looking at your monitor. Like run the whole pipeline as much as you can.
Yeah,
Very
slates
true.
are a big deal. That's one thing I love that NFL does at Super Bowl. There's a massive distribution system and dozens of shows on site that all take the game at some point in the night. They're all doing their own little, German, French, Spanish, whatever, before the game starts. But then the
Sure.
game, so there's a common game feed that comes to everybody, and there's they use two 24 tracks. They're those videotape multi-track things. I forget what they were called, but they spit out 24 channels of audio, and somebody has gone through. This is full mix left. This is full mix center. This is full mix right. This is full mix LFE. This is full mix, left surround, right surround. Then there's the clean version. There's this announce only. This is the ref mic. And that just loops for like 3 or 4 days. So we're all there setting up. And then you finally get your hose from NFL and it's, it comes by a Matty or Dante or however it, DT12 pairs, whatever. But when I plug this into the fader and I open it up, it says, "Hi, here's the audio you're going to get here come game day." I love that. I love people putting
that's
up
pretty good.
slates.
That's cool.
On golf. We've gone into every CCU and reprogrammed the little name that comes up. So when you put up bars, it says that this is show camera whatever. And here's where it is. Like if this camera, we use operator names a lot. So this is Jeff. And then it'll say 12 green / 18 green. That means at some point of the day, he'll be at 12 green, and then part of the day he'll be at 18 green. But there's no doubt when you get this video feed that says bars, Jeff 12 green / 18 green, that this is what you're going to see on this hose. So that goes a long ways to making facts work.
That's
and again,
a really
all
great
comes down to
idea, Greg.
information and how do you present it. I mean, a checklist is fine, but when I look at this hose and see that, I don't need a checklist.
Yeah, no, that for setting up, that's a great idea. Matter of fact, the guys are working on the truck, getting ready for a show coming up, and one of the things he asked me, we came back to this a while back. Another show was, is there an HDMI tester? We were talking about that, right? Is the HDMI tester? I need to test these lines to make sure that I have the ones that are labeled are right. I'm like, yes, there is. And we were talking about how much they were, and you couldn't believe it. But now that you brought up about the CCUs, I'm going to go do that in our CCUs tomorrow, just to add that in there. It's just a simple solution to prevent problems.
Well,
Or
and
Jeff,
to
now that you brought up the whole programming thing, if you don't mind my screen sharing here for a second, there's
Go ahead.
Doug Johnson has this crew access.
I'm
and
aware
so
of that. I was with him from the very beginning with that. I don't subscribe to it anymore, but yeah, that was one
Okay,
that
so
I
you're
looked at.
Yeah, so in here it does have once you set up an event, you can have your call sheets, your have like
Yeah.
nearest hospital, but then you get in here to the checklist and pull from storage, pretest, calibrate, load for transport. So he's got all these pre-made checklists. And anyways, it's a tool that's out there if anybody wanted to know kind of what it looks like behind the scenes.
He's come a long way with that. It was really more so about crewing more or less whenever I first got into it with him. But I do need to look into that a little bit deeper with him since I've got to.
Where he's come a long way with that he just posted a few days ago? He's finally found the symmetric radius. He's moved his comps out of his audio board.
Don't even start on that conversation, Greg. We're going to do that in another one altogether.
I just dude, it's about time.
Yeah, that was a wow one.
I'm happy for him.
Yeah, he's definitely growing. That's the cool thing. But no, I agree with you, Guy, that something like this would be really helpful as long as it's easy to use. And getting people in and out of it, onboarding them, getting them to understand. That's why I was thinking of something a little bit more like that was online, that was easy. Here's your link, and just send somebody a link, open it on their web browser on their phone, click, 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 click. They could go through their list, and then it reports back and says, hey, I'm all done. All right, cool. Then let's do it. Then that might be a trigger to you to say, okay, well, let's look at your camera. Let's make sure that what you checked off is truly the job done at that point. Bo, you had something too?
I was just going to continue the slates conversation just briefly since Greg
Yeah.
brought it up, but we slate everything. So every line, every tie line that comes in and out of our rack that hits the truck has a slate when we leave at night. All my graphics machines, when I leave at night, we throw the slates up on every graphics machine to ID each line. All the EBS machines in the trucks have their own slates. So like literally everything is slated. So when you're seeing a monitor wall, you can be like, oh, that's not what's supposed to be there. This got switched or whatever. So slates are definitely vital as part of the fax workflow.
So in your truck or your setup, you're actually pushing that out of your graphics subsystem. So your expression or whatever, you're pushing that out so that it says this is a slate.
Yeah, so literally, my tie lines to the truck, let's say we have 3 pipes, just for ease of use. Let's say that we're running AR graphics on 3 different cameras, 3 different sources that hit the switcher in the A unit or the B unit. I literally have a route where either my AR machine is leaving that truck, hitting that source in the A unit, or if my graphics machine's not up, or if we've left for the night, then that flips to a still store, where it's literally just sending the slate down that line. So they're never seeing black on the source from me. They're always seeing either the slate or the content.
That's actually another great idea too, so that they don't have to wonder if they see black, is it really there or not? Yeah, that's a good idea. Very good.
And like we're getting ready to do a show soon where the formats are kind of all over the place. So my slates will literally say like what my format is, 1080p, 50, HDR, and it'll say, embedded audio on channels 1 and 2. Like it'll basically say like anybody that sees this pipe, like Greg was saying, when showtime happens, this is what you're going to be getting down this pipe.
Adding formats to that that's a great idea, because most of the time we're producing a 1080p or higher at 4K 2160p, but at 60, not 30. But when we're doing virtual events, Zoom wants to see 30 as a better system at 1080p 30. And then we're doing this thing to ATP Media and they want 1080i. So yeah, that having a specific slate on every output that's different would definitely help. That's a great idea. I didn't even think about that, but this is what I wanted to do, guys. I wanted to get together and get a lot of people that just do this stuff and just share information, and hopefully somebody could walk away with a couple ideas. I've already got 3 or 4 that I'm thinking about now. John, good to see you. Real quick, tell me about what's your process, because I know you kind of do things a little bit different on a corporate campus type setup. And I don't really know, how big is your crew, or is it a small crew or is it a large crew? How do you follow up with the checklist or the to-dos?
Yeah, so I have about 150 people who report to me or through multiple leaders. Our AV team is about 20 people strong. And we have multiple events always going on, conference rooms, training rooms. So we're responsible for a bunch of stuff. So I've integrated a lot of what I do into ServiceNow. We have, as well as I put it in the chat a little bit ago, just around Microsoft, their Power Apps and their Forms. The Forms is very similar to what you can do with Google. And then the Power Apps and Automate allow you to do automation around that. So I can like kick off a ticket if a conference room has something wrong. I can automatically reach out to my contractor who does my Crestron programming, so I can automatically get that out if we find something wrong with the room that's programming related. Just so we can, because I have 20 people and we have, a campus that's over a million square feet. So just all the different spaces. Like we have 750 people in this week just for training that are partners with us. We have on average 500 people in for that. So all of a sudden now there's an auditorium that's completely taken up just for our broker trainings that we're doing. And so there's just different things we have to prep for, but making sure things are consistent because we have these meetings that happen all day long from all these different groups. Just making sure everything is done consistently. We even took over booking because we were finding that our facilities team was booking back-to-back meetings, which means we can't do our pre-check. We can't mic
Oh,
people up. We can't
yeah.
go through the slide
There's
deck.
that.
And it's like, okay, and not to mention getting 1,000 people in and out of a room, you can't have it back-to-back. And then, you have the chaos of what that is. So those are a couple of the things that we think about and do. We're doing simple corporate stuff most of the time. A couple microphones, a presentation deck. We'll maybe go out to Zoom if we have remote participants. So it's not super complicated, but it's people notice when we make mistakes. So,
Don't they always?
yeah.
Well, you could apply it to just about everything. It's like I built a basic list, but it's a checklist that we have out at our church, and it was the same thing. It's like these are volunteers; they don't really think like we think. So it's like, is the CD player or CD recorder on? Yeah, this is years ago. So is the CD recorder on? Do you have a CD in it? I mean, it was down to the very, very, very things. Did you press record at 5 minutes till? All of those little pieces. So I think that those are everybody kind of can take a little bit back with them and do a little bit more with them. It is great that I didn't think about definitely the Microsoft side if you're in that camp, which I know a lot of big corporations are. For me, Google is just where we live. Thank God I got away from Teams. That's all I can say.
We have Teams and Zoom because we care about quality.
Oh,
So
you're
Teams just comes with
double
it.
the
It can do
pain.
chat. Yeah, but
John, this is being recorded.
yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Well, we all know the truth. That's the thing.
Right.
We all know the truth.
Hey,
Well,
there
hey,
was
guys.
there was one other checklist I wanted to mention because I don't know if this got brought up.
Okay, what's that?
And part of that's because I do a lot of corporate, except I'm not on a campus. I'm I'm specking shows, or they've been spec'd for me. But if I'm specking it,
True.
a pull list for the shop, a pull list.
Mm.
And I can't tell you how many times like I've done shows where, like, let's say, oh, the speaker stands didn't show up, and I'm like, and I asked the guys, whatever AV company it is or production company, I'm like, do you guys have a pull list? And if they say no, I'm like, well, and then if they say yes, I'm like, do you have a column that it got on the truck? Because there is the what you want, because the shop manager has to give you what you want, in inventory.
Right.
There's the did it get put in a pile, and then there's the did it get put on the truck, and the other thing that does, by the way, for me, even if it's not my shop, and I don't have a shop now, but I used to, but even if it's not my shop, it's like I go down my list and I go, oh yeah, I hadn't thought to brought that, but I think we're going to need it for this show.
Sure.
Things like that are invaluable.
Yeah.
And I know it's a little different in the broadcast world or on a campus setting where, it's done a little differently than that, but when you're working on shows where things change, whether it's corporate or live music or theater, where things are custom pulled for that event or show or series of shows, that becomes really important.
No, I agree completely with that. We moved to that at the end of our tour. It was like I had a checklist for the van 1, van 2, trailer, everything, and also the flight packs were a big part of it because we were having to do carnets going in and out of Canada. So we had to know where everything was. If they wanted to say, I want to see the SM58, I don't know what that is. We had to be able to go to the specific case and the case within the case to find that, to be able to show them this is what it is. So no, a checklist for loading and packing, that's a whole nother thing of making sure that you have the right things.
One quick thing I wanted to share is a couple things that we do on the virtual side. Really cool trick in Zoom is if you're on a I have a Mac Mini dedicated to this. You can open Zoom multiple times, and you can set different virtual backgrounds, and then you cover up the camera. I cover up the camera. You get hidden, and you can just set video loops as background, and that way they show up as a pin. They're 1080p, and we can put like 10 virtual participants into a meeting and have all of our Zoom rooms populated with that. That's one thing that we do. Then I put the EVS. That's this EVS video that you can load into your EVS, where each frame is a different letter for the red EVS that is often used to show like, hey, this is EVSK, L, or whatever. And then I also put a test tone IO in. That's a little tool I built that allows you to originally just generate test tones. But if you go to it, you can set it to the speak mode, and then it will do a 1 kilohertz tone, and then stop the tone and say, this is, and then the name. So like we use that for when we do Spanish interpretation.
That's great.
We put that
That's
in,
awesome.
and then it just says 1 kilohertz tone, so I can check my levels, and then it's like, this is Spanish interpretation. And then it does it again. It also says the name and has a bouncing ball that way, and the eye stays active. Yeah, it's free tool.
Oh,
and
that's
proven
fantastic,
useful for
Jonas.
us.
That is fantastic. I had picked up from doing the things with Tony Robbins and the Mori Studios. I'd picked up a couple of videos that they had, but it was to fill the LED walls. So it's the 7x7, is that right? 49? I can't remember now off the top of my head, but it was the full gallery, and then they had the half gallery, so 5x5, the 25, and that was put up just on the secondary monitor that was feeding into the walls. And then they had their systems, one of them was Disguise, the other was a proprietary Unreal based system. They would chop up each one of those, but they needed to have the sizes just like what we have here in this gallery in exactly the right place. So if anybody needs those that could help, I think I sent them to Greg to help him do some testing and stuff, but those are really handy. But Jonas, that's a great idea about multiple instances joining, because that's a whole nother thing there too. Instead of having to call all our closest friends and going, hey, can you join on a Zoom with me real quick and check out things? So we've all done that, right? But those are all part of it. So yeah, that's a great idea, and thanks for that. The test tone idea, Jonas, is really cool. Yeah, that's neat. Very handy. Well, guys, it has been a great hour and 10 minutes. Hard to believe it's just flown by. Love sharing with you, and I love hearing about how people are doing things the different ways, and how hopefully somebody walked away with a nugget of information, and maybe improve your workflows a little bit more moving forward. Thanks for all coming, and we'll see you next week. I'm going to be on the road the next couple of weeks, so we'll be in a different venue. I'm not going to bring my normal classy bar venue with me everywhere I go, but we'll see you on the road, and talk to you next week.